Hello people of the internet, my name is CEO for SeoTheProducer.com and the Producers blog, and today it's part 2 of our drum compression basics. Cue the motherfucking intro. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this drum compression series. Now, I'm gonna start off by saying that in case you missed part 1, I'm gonna put a link in the description, and if you're still struggling with compressors, I suggest that you go and check that one out first, as we talk about all the basic controls and how to really basically set it up. So, today instead, we're talking about a little bit more advanced stuff. And we're going to talk about the different families of compressors, tube, optical, FET and VCA, and we're going to talk about what they're good at, what they're not so good at, what their sound is, etc, etc. So, I'm going to start off by talking about tube compressors. Now, tube compressors like this Fairchild 670 right here have amazing sound qualities. They sound very rich, have a lot of character, a lot of color, and that's why they sound so good on acoustic instruments such as vocals or string sections or guitars. So the Fairchild, for example, was widely used on basically everything that the Beatles made, and we know how good that stuff sounds. The Fairchild is an amazing piece of gear, it's a beast. I mean, it has 14 tubes, 20 transistors, and a plethora of other components. However, it's very slow in response, and that to me is an indication of a compressor that won't necessarily work on transient heavy percussive instruments such as drums. To me, tube compressors don't really have a place in modern pop rock, hip hop drum production, drum mixing. And I'm sure that a lot of people will disagree with this and will call me a madman, but that's how I feel. I will, however, use a tube compressor on something like a drum room just to get the vibe and character of that tube compression. Now, moving on to something like the LA2A instead, which is an optical compressor, an optocompressor. Optical compressors sound, again, very rich, have a lot of color, but they are medium in response, slow to medium response. So again, they won't necessarily work that well on percussive instruments, such as drums. And the LA2A, for example, comes in 3 versions. There's a grey version, a silver version, and an LA2 version. And the silver version is has a faster response, and it does actually sound better on drums. It sounds really good on drums. Now, moving on to something like 1176 instead, the 1176 is a FET compressor. FET spelled F-E-T. And FET compressors emulate the sound of tubes, but with transistor circuits, so they're really fast and responsive, and that means great on drums. Now, 1176s especially sound good on pretty much anything. Everyone uses 1176s, they just work. I personally love them on drums and vocals and bass, and I just use them all the time, and they just work. The controls, however, are a little bit weird, a little bit different. The input control, for example, is both the input and threshold control. So the more you pull up the input, the more gain you're pushing into the compressor, and the lower the threshold is getting. The output control instead is just plain output gain. The attack and release are a little bit different. They work the opposite, so turning the knobs towards the higher values shortens attack and release times. So quick attack, slow attack. The ratio and knee are dependent on the setting that you choose. So low ratio will have, like this 2:1 here, will have a softer knee, and the 20:1 will have a harder knee, so more aggressive compression. VCA compressors, like this SSL compressor, bus compressor right here, are really fast in response. They might have a little bit less coloration than, say, a tube compressor, but they they just work on percussive instruments and they're really fast to react. Now, the SSL bus compressor, for example, was introduced in the SSL 4K consoles in the 70s, and this compressor specifically has an amazing gluing sound, gluing factor. Once you apply it to a stereo mix, it will start to pull the elements of the mix together, and it'll make the mix sound coherent and punchy and great. So it is best, in my opinion, it is best on stereo sources, but VCAs come in mono versions as well, such as the DBX 160, which works great on kicks and snares and bass and vocals even. VCAs are sort of a beast of their own, and I love them, but I hate them, and I love them on really certain specific elements, like the ones that I've talked about. Now, I have a mix here by Carlos Gonzalez. The song is called A Place for Us, and it's not mixed, only a bit of leveling and a bit of panning and just a few EQs here and there on very specific instruments. Now, I'm gonna play the mix as it is, and then I'll insert the plugins as we go along, the different compressors. And the first one is gonna be the tube compressor. Now, listen to how it's sort of degrading the sound a little bit. It's making it a little bit duller in the top end, and the bottom end is not really controlled that much. It's just sort of compressing. So let's listen to that.
I miss you so badly. I don't know if I'm even thinking straight. I'm feeling numb. Oh, I can taste your lust. I miss you so badly. I don't know if I'm even thinking straight. I'm feeling numb.
Now, okay, sure, it's more aggressive, it's more ambient, but it's not really punching, and it's not really controlling the low end as much. So let's try the 1176 now, and let's hear what that is doing.
I miss you so badly. I don't know if I'm even thinking straight. I'm feeling numb. Oh, I can taste your lust. I miss you so badly. I don't know if I'm even thinking straight. I'm feeling numb. Oh, I can taste your lust.
Now, to me, this one sounds much more punchy and aggressive, and the low end is nice and controlled. What if we tried the LA2A instead? And I'll insert it as the music plays.
I miss you so badly. I don't know if I'm even thinking straight. I'm feeling numb. Oh, I can taste your lust. I miss you so badly. I don't know if I'm even thinking straight. I'm feeling numb.
Now, to me, the LA2A is really the release of the LA2A is just all over the place. It's not releasing in time with the music, and it's just doing whatever it wants. The low end is not controlled, and it's not punchy. So, what if we tried the bus compressor, the VCA bus compressor?
I miss you so badly. I don't know if I'm even thinking straight. I'm feeling numb. Oh, I can taste your lust. I miss you so badly. I don't know if I'm even thinking straight. I'm feeling numb. Oh, I can taste your love.
Now, to me, out of all 4 compressors, this one is the one that can control the low end the best. The mix is punchy, the drums are punchy and controlled, ambient and lively. So out of all 4, to me, in this situation, the SSL is the one winning. Now, you might be thinking, so how much compression do I actually have to apply? What is the right amount of compression to apply to a signal? Well, it totally depends, and it depends on the material, it depends on how good was the drummer to play consistently, how much of the character of the compressor do you want in the sound, and what is the general feel that you're going for. I mean, are you going for a really soft and intimate sound? Are you going for an aggressive sound? It all depends. But the thing is, every compressor has their sort of sweet spot, which is usually around the sort of -3 to -6, 7 dBs of reduction, but it really depends. So, for example, I'll just pull up the basic Logic compressor that we talked about in the previous tutorial, and let's just look at this, for example. In this situation, how much compression do I want to apply to this signal? Let's play the mix without compression, and then we'll just analyze it and see how much compression should we apply. Now, judging by the meters, and actually take a look at those. We can tell that some degree of compression was used in recording, in the process of recording, so we can see that we won't probably need so much compression to control the signal. So all the compression that we're going to add is all about sound and character. So of course we can control the peaks even more, and that's what we're going to do now with this compressor, with this basic Logic compressor. Okay, so you can notice that if I go a little bit too far, we start to hear the compression, and we don't want to hear the compression. We want to be as transparent as possible, unless we're going for a really compressed and dirty sound. But in this situation, let's find the sweet spot where adjusting the peaks, we're controlling the peaks, but we're not actually hearing the compression as much. Okay, so for me, that's a sweet spot. That's a good point where I'm not hearing the compression and the peaks are all leveled out and nice. Okay people, this is all we've got time for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making it for you, and I hope you got something out of it. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you liked the video, drop a comment below if you'd like to know something more about compression, about music and audio production, if you'd like to see something else in the next video, and what was your favorite part of this video. And make sure to visit www.ciotheproducer.com for more audio and production goodness, and I'll see you in the next episode.